Alright, today we're going to learn about Alexander the Great, the king of Macedonia. We mentioned him a little as we've talked about the Peloponnesian War, where Athens and Sparta fought each other, and from that they became extremely weak, which led to them being able to be overthrown by Alexander the Great. As we go through, you're going to see things that are highlighted in yellow. Those are going to be the things that you should write down as we listen to this presentation. Alright, so the Peloponnesian War and the rise of Macedonia. While the Greek city-states fought one another, Macedonia was growing stronger. Now Macedonia is the neighbors to the north of Greece, and King Philip, who was the father of Alexander the Great, was in power. He unified the warlike tribes of Macedonia, and he created a very well-trained army. So by 338 BCE, King Philip conquered most of mainland Greece. While city-states were allowed many rights, they were under his control. He wanted to attack Persia next, but in 336 BC, he was murdered. So that's where we see Alexander, his son, becomes a new king of Macedonia. So Alexander was only 20 years old when he became king. However, he was well prepared to be king. He studied under Aristotle, which you guys, that name should sound familiar, as a famous Greek philosopher that you learned in your last station. Some of the things that Alexander focused on learning about in his young age was public speaking, science, philosophy, and to appreciate Greek culture. So even though he's actually from Macedonia, because he studied all this famous art and architecture, culture, that we've learned about in our last centers, he's going to imitate that and copy that. Alexander crushes a Greek rebellion, and then he turns to the east to carry on his father's plan to invade Persia. He hoped to unite them by having a common enemy. Of course, obviously the Greeks would not like the Persians because the Persians tried to invade Greece and take over, although, as we know, they were unsuccessful. Alright, so Alexander invades Asia Minor, which is present-day Turkey. In 334 BCE, he united with the Greeks and invaded. He planned to use terror, that should have an R on it, and kindness to conquer an empire. So the idea of terror, if they resisted to work with him and resisted to become part of Alexander's empire, cities would be burned to the ground and people would be sold into slavery. However, he would use kindness as well, that, you know what, if you just decide to surrender and try instead of trying to fight him, cities would get to keep their government officials, and Alexander would even help rebuild damaged property. Alright, so Alexander's plan to unite his empire. In a short time, Alexander extended his rule over Asia Minor, we can see here, because we see Macedonia to the north of Greece, Asia Minor, Egypt down here, and to Central Asia, which would be part of the area controlled by Persia. So it reached the farthest limits of the Persian Empire. It even technically reached Western India. Many leaders throughout time have dreamed of ruling the world, and Alexander the Great came as close to anyone at fulfilling that dream. Alright, so in his plan to take over, he faced some challenges. The first challenge would be that how could he control such a large territory? He also was faced with the challenge of how could he unite so many different peoples and cultures. As we said, he's from Macedonia, controls parts of Greece, Asia Minor, and there's people from like modern-day Turkey, Egypt, definitely a different culture than Turkey or Greece, and then you have Persia reaching almost all the way to Western India. So you have a large mix of people and cultures that he now controls. Alright, so his plan, he divided it into 3 parts. The first was going to be to spread Greek culture and ideas, then to use religion to inspire loyalty, and last to show respect for the cultures that he conquered and adopt some of their customs. So let's take a look at how he does this. Alright, so part 1 is spread Greek ideas. We know he's a very, very big fan of Greek ideas. and he's going to spread it to the places that he conquers. This is accomplished by building Greek-style cities, which include marketplaces, temples, theaters, just all of the ideas that the Greeks had in their city-states. And because of this, Greeks flocked to these new cities that he built in the areas that he conquered. And with these new Greek-style city-states, or cities, he brought with them the Greek language, laws, art, and architecture. So Greeks are very willing to be moving to these areas because they have so much like them. One of the most famous cities that he builds is Alexandria in Egypt. Now, a number of the cities he builds throughout the area of his territory are named after him. The one in Egypt is going to be one of the most important centers of trade and learning. It's actually home to one of the largest libraries. It has a marketplace, a university, a gymnasium, a theater, courts, even a temple dedicated to Poseidon. So we can see how much in the other cities that he's implemented or put in place the Greek ideas. Alright, plan 2 is to use religion to gain loyalty. Now, remember, not all of these people have similar beliefs, but he's going to use their beliefs to gain their loyalty. So he honored Egyptian and Persian gods. So as he would be in areas, he would honor or even pray to those gods of the people he had conquered. Later on, he encouraged the idea that he himself was a god, and actually required them to accept him as a god. So at first he kind of adapts and brings a religion into his life, and then he starts saying, you know what, I am a god, and that you should accept me as a god within your religion. Alright, now, the third part of his plan is to show respect of the conquered cultures. So instead of wiping out all of their belief systems and implementing his own, he decides to adopt some of their practices, such as a Persian system of government. He actually allowed the governors to run the day-to-day business of their land. He also borrowed Persian customs, like he wore their clothes, and he started to follow some of their cultural beliefs. He even encouraged marriage between Macedonians and Persians. So he really tried to mix the cultures as much as he could. Some think that he was trying to simply be more accepting. In this way, trying to be a more acceptable ruler to his former enemies by adapting their customs. Others actually thought that he truly considered the people he conquered to be equal to the Greeks and the Macedonians. Okay, so unfortunately we do see his empire crumble. It became so large, so big, and by 324 BCE, after 10 years of fighting, the armies refused to go on anymore, and the next year Alexander caught malaria and died. The empire fell apart. After fighting, it divided up into 3 kingdoms. We actually see that the settlers left the cities he constructed, and a lot of the cities that he had built fell into ruins. His generals fought each other for control of the empire. Even family members fought each other for control. So we see that the empire falls apart. However, we do see that his dream lives on. That Alexander was able to spread the Greek ideas throughout a vast area, and the Greek culture would continue to influence the lands once ruled by Alexander. We're going to see as we study more areas, such as Rome and the rest of Europe, how, because of Alexander and his spreading these ideas, that these ideas continue. And that's why we see so many of the Greek ideas, as we saw in our station, why they still exist today.